Henry Borel, case get in. Yeah, it's quiet tonight. Where to? Doesn't matter. We're going to Borel Rio de Janeiro, March 2021. You ever hear about a case where everyone knew everyone but nobody did anything until it was too late? March 8th, 2021, Monday morning, 3:30 a.m. A 4-year-old boy arrives at the hospital, unconscious, bruised, bleeding internally. His stepfather carries him in, says the boy fell off the bed. Doctors take one look and know, this wasn't a fall, this was torture. His name was Henry Borel Medeiros, 4 years old, blonde hair, blue eyes, sweet kid. He lived with his mother, Monique Medeiros, and her boyfriend, Dr. Jairinho, city councilman, rich, powerful, connected, and according to the evidence, violent. Henry died at 5:15 a.m. that morning. Massive internal injuries, bleeding on the brain, ruptured liver, 56 external injuries on his body. 56. This wasn't one fall. This wasn't an accident. This was months, maybe years of abuse. And everyone around Henry saw signs. Teachers, neighbors, relatives, nannies. But nobody stopped it, because Jairinho was powerful, and Monique was complicit. Tonight, we're going to Borel Medeiros. We're going back to March 2021. We're going to talk about what happens when a child is failed by every adult who should have protected him. You ready? Because this one isn't about mystery. It's about failure, systemic, familial, criminal, and a 4-year-old boy who paid the price. Let me tell you about Henry Borel and the night that exposed a monster. Who was Henry Borel? Borel Medeiros, born March 4th, 2017, Rio de Janeiro, 4 years old, son of Monique Medeiros and Lemuel Borel. His parents separated when Henry was a baby. Lemuel had limited custody. Henry lived primarily with his mother, Monique, and in 2020, Monique started dating Dr. Jairo Souza Santos Júnior, known as Dr. Jairinho was a doctor, a Rio de Janeiro city councilman from a powerful political family. His father was also a councilman, rich, connected, influential on paper. He looked successful. Behind closed doors, different story. Henry was a normal 4-year-old, loved playing, loved dinosaurs, went to preschool, but in the months before his death, people started noticing changes. The warning signs, starting in late 2020. People around Henry saw things. Teachers at his preschool reported bruises on Henry's body. Behavioral changes. He became withdrawn. Quieter, he'd flinch when adults raised their voices. Nannies who worked in Monique and Jairinho's home reported hearing Henry cry at night, seeing bruises, Jairinho being aggressive toward Henry, Monique doing nothing to intervene. Lemuel, Henry's biological father, noticed bruises when Henry visited Henry, saying he was scared of Uncle Jairinho. Henry begging not to go back to his mother's apartment. Lemuel reported his concerns to authorities multiple times. He contacted Child Protective Services, filed complaints. Nothing happened, because Jairinho was powerful, had connections, knew people, and Monique backed him up, said everything was fine, said Henry was clumsy, just a normal kid who bruised easily. The system failed Henry. Every adult who saw the signs and did nothing failed him. And on March 8th, 2021, those failures killed him. March 8th, 2021, the night Henry died, Sunday night into Monday morning. Henry, Monique, and Jairinho were in their luxury apartment in Borel Medeiros. Expensive building, doorman, security cameras, upscale neighborhood. According to later testimony and evidence, Throughout the evening, Jairinho was alone with Henry multiple times. Monique was in the apartment, but not always in the same room. At some point during the night exact time, disputed Henry was severely beaten, kicked, punched, thrown, his liver ruptured, his head struck something or was struck. Internal bleeding began. At 3:30 a.m., Jairinho carried Henry to the car, drove him to hospital, Baradora, private hospital nearby. He told doctors Henry fell off the bed while playing. Doctors examined Henry. They didn't believe Jairinho. The injuries were too severe, too extensive, too inconsistent with a fall. But by then, it was too late. Henry died at 5:15 a.m., 4 years old. The autopsy revealed 56 external injuries on Henry's body: bruises, cuts, marks. Ruptured liver requires massive blunt force trauma, intracranial hemorrhage, bleeding on the brain. Multiple injuries in different stages of healing, meaning this had been happening for a while. The medical examiner's conclusion: Henry Borel was beaten to death. This was not an accident. This was not a fall. This was homicide. The investigation police immediately launched a criminal investigation. They questioned Jairinho and Monique. Both stuck to the same story. Henry fell off the bed, but police weren't buying it. They examined the apartment, interviewed neighbors, reviewed security footage, and they found security camera footage showed Jairinho carrying Henry's limp body to the car at 3:30 a.m. Henry was already unconscious, possibly already dead. Neighbors reported hearing a child crying and screaming in the weeks before. Text messages between Monique and Jairinho showed them discussing Henry's behavior, Jairinho's frustration with him, and then the breakthrough. The nanny's testimony. Several nannies who'd worked for Monique and Jairinho came forward. They testified Jairinho was physically abusive toward Henry. He'd hit Henry, kick him, throw him. Monique witnessed this and did nothing. One nanny said she quit because she couldn't stand watching Henry be abused. Another said Monique told her to lie about bruises. If anyone asked, this wasn't a one-time incident. This was ongoing systematic abuse, and Monique knew. The arrests on April 8, 2021, 1 month after Henry's death, police arrested Dr. Jairinho, charged with torture and murder. Monique Medeiros, charged with torture, murder, and failure to protect. Both denied the charges. Both claimed innocence, but the evidence was overwhelming. The trial began in 2022. It was one of the most watched trials in Brazil. Jairinho was a public figure. Monique was a teacher, a mother, and they were accused of torturing and killing. Prosecution presented autopsy showing 56 injuries. Testimony from nannies describing abuse. Text messages showing Jairinho's frustration with Henry. Security footage showing Jairinho carrying Henry's limp body. Expert testimony that injuries were inconsistent with a fall. Evidence of prior abuse. Bruises in different stages of healing. Defense argued Henry fell injuries were from rough play. Nannies were lying. Prosecution was biased because Jairinho was a politician. The jury didn't believe them. The verdict: March 2023, March 16, 2023, 2 years after Henry's death. The verdict: Dr. Jairinho, guilty torture murder, sentenced to 59 years in prison. Monique Medeiros, guilty torture murder, failure to protect, sentenced to 43 years in prison. Both are currently in prison. Both are appealing. But Henry is still dead. Lenyel's fight. Lenyel Borel, Henry's father, spent years fighting for his son. He reported abuse, begged authorities to intervene, tried to get custody. Nobody listened. After Henry's death, Lenyel became an advocate for child protection laws. He pushed for stricter enforcement of abuse reports, faster response from Child Protective Services, legal reforms to protect children from powerful abusers in 2021. Brazil passed Lei Henry Borel's law. It increased penalties for child abuse and created protocols for faster intervention, named after his son, a law born from tragedy. But it didn't bring Henry back. The system's failure, here's the uncomfortable truth. Henry Borel's death was preventable. Teachers reported concerns. Nannies reported abuse. Lenoa reported abuse multiple times. Child Protective Services were contacted, but nobody acted. Why? Because Jairinho was powerful, a councilman, connected, and Monique covered for him, and the system protected the powerful, not the vulnerable. Henry died because every adult who should have saved him didn't. Section 3. Theories. There's no mystery here. Jairinho killed Henry. Monique let it happen. But let's talk about the how and the why. Theory 1. Jealousy and control. Jairinho didn't want Henry around. Henry was Monique's son from a previous relationship, a reminder of her past. Jairinho saw him as an obstacle, resented him, took out his frustration on him. Monique chose Jairinho over her son. Evidence. Text messages showed Jairinho complaining about Henry, calling him annoying, saying he was in the way. Theory 2. Pattern of violence. Investigators discovered Jairinho had a history. Previous girlfriends reported abuse. Ex-wives filed complaints. One of his ex-partners said her daughter, his stepdaughter at the time, was also abused by him. Jairinho had a pattern of violence toward children in relationships, and Monique either didn't know or didn't care. Theory 3. Enabler and accomplice. Some argue Monique is just as guilty as Jairinho. She witnessed the abuse, did nothing, covered for him. She prioritized her relationship over her son's safety. She's not just complicit, she's culpable. The law agreed. She was convicted of torture and murder, not just failure to protect. Theory 4. Systemic protection of the powerful. Jairinho was a city councilman. Political family, connections. When Lenoa reported abuse, authorities didn't act aggressively. When nannies quit because of the violence, nobody investigated. The system protects the powerful, and Henry paid the price. The unanswered questions. Why didn't Child Protective Services intervene sooner? Why didn't teachers' reports trigger investigation? Could Lenoa have done more to get custody? How many warnings were ignored? What accountability do the institutions have? Henry Borel is dead. Jairinho and Monique are in prison, but the system that failed him still intact. Section 4. Closing. We're here. Look, I don't know how to make sense of this one. Henry Borel was 4 years old. He had bruises. He cried. He told people he was scared. Teachers saw, nannies saw, his father saw, and nobody stopped it. Not because they didn't know, but because the man hurting him was powerful, and the woman who should have protected him chose her boyfriend over her son. Henry died in agony, 56 injuries, ruptured liver, bleeding brain, 4 years old. And the last person he saw before he died was the man who killed him. Jairinho got 59 years. Monique got 43 years. Is that justice? For some, maybe, but not for Henry, because Henry is gone, and no sentence brings him back. Lenoa fought for his son, did everything he could, and the system failed him. Now he lives with the knowledge that if anyone had listened, Henry might still be alive. The meter's off. Barra da Tijuca is quiet tonight, but somewhere in Rio, there's a grave. Henry Borel Medeiros. March 4th, 2017. March 8th, 2021. 4 years old. loved dinosaurs, deserved better. There's an ancient truth that says to harm a child is to commit the gravest sin, that children are sacred, innocent, deserving of protection. Henry Borel was 4 years old. He trusted the adults around him. He trusted his mother to keep him safe. She didn't. There's a principle woven into existence, that those who protect the vulnerable are honored, and those who harm them more, allow them to be harmed, carry an unbearable weight. Monique Medeiros was Henry's mother. She gave birth to him, raised him, and then she chose a man over him, watched him be beaten, did nothing, lead to protect her boyfriend, and let her son die. I don't understand that. I can't comprehend how a mother watches her child suffer and does nothing. But it happens, more than we want to admit. There's a warning in ancient wisdom that those who harm children, who cause them to stumble, would be better off with a millstone around their neck, cast into the sea. Harsh words, but fitting, because what Jairinho and Monique did to Henry, there's no adequate punishment. 59 years, 43 years. It's something, but it's not enough. I think about Lenyo sometimes. Henry's father. He fought, he reported, he begged for help, and nobody listened. Now he lives with the guilt even, though it wasn't his fault. He lives with the knowledge that he tried and the system failed. That's a weight no parent should carry, but he does. There's a promise in ancient wisdom that the innocent will be vindicated, that justice will come, that those who mourn will be comforted. Linnell got partial justice, convictions, sentences, a law in Henry's name, but his son is still dead, and that can never be fixed. We're told to protect the vulnerable, to speak for those who can't speak for themselves, to intervene when we see harm. Teachers saw Henry's bruises. They reported it. Nobody acted. Nannies saw the abuse. They quit. They spoke up. Nobody acted. Lemuel fought for custody. He filed complaints. Nobody acted. Why? Because Jairinho was powerful, and power protects itself, even when it means sacrificing a child. Henry Borel deserved better. He deserved a mother who chose him. He deserved a system that protected him. He deserved adults who acted when they saw the signs. He didn't get any of that, and now he's gone. Hey, this one's hard. I know, but Henry Borel's story needs to be told. Not for shock, not for clicks, but because children like Henry are dying right now, being abused by people who are supposed to love them, being failed by systems that are supposed to protect them. If this case affected you, if you're angry, heartbroken, or just heavy, do something. Hit that like button to honor Henry's memory. Subscribe if you want more stories that expose systemic failure, child abuse, and injustice. Drop a comment. Tell me what you think about Monique's sentence, about the system, about what we owe to children. I read every one. And here's the most important part. If you see a child being abused, report it. Don't assume someone else will. Don't think it's not your place. Report it. Call Child Protective Services. Call the police. Call a school counselor. You might save a life. Henry's teachers reported. Nannies reported. His father reported. But the system didn't act fast enough. Maybe if more people had reported, maybe if the pressure had been greater, maybe Henry would still be alive. I've got more cases, more stories, but this one stays with you. Next time, we're going somewhere different. Until then, remember Henry Borel. Remember that children need us. And remember, if you see something, do something. It might make all the difference.